Hello and welcome to our monthly Digital BC live stream. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. This is actually my first time hosting. We host these calls monthly and we cover a wide range of topics relevant to the BC digital community. My name is Jen Lambert and I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the province. I lead the digital office and my team's mandate is to accelerate digital service modernization and the adoption of digital ways of working across government. I want to start it off in a good way by acknowledging that I am joining you today from beautiful Saanich, British Columbia, where I'm grateful to work and play on the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen and Wasanich peoples, whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. I'm a petite woman with brown hair a bit past my shoulders, and I'm wearing mostly black with a little bit of a mustard blazer on. This session is recorded and it'll be shared with an internal and external audience in BC Government, internal to BC Government, and you can turn on live captions at the top of your screen. As you can see, we are using MS Teams Live. So to ask questions, upvote those you like and post in the chat as you normally do in MS Teams, and we'll be filtering the upvoted ones into our conversation. We will also follow up with our podcast later this month with any questions that we don't get to. At the end of the session, you'll get a survey, and we do read this survey, and we use it to drive our topics and adjust our approach on a monthly basis. Okay, so with that, I'll start off with the introduction. So later this week, we're actually releasing a new plan for BC Government's next steps in our digital journey. That plan will be a successor to our digital framework that we launched in 2019. The framework set out goals that would help us become a more digital government, and we've largely achieved those goals thanks to setting our clear targets, thanks to collaboration and hard work across government. I might even say that we achieved more than we thought we would, or a little bit faster than we thought we would. And some of that was due to the accelerant of the pandemic, where we were able to prove to ourselves and to people in British Columbia that we could deliver excellent digital services in days and weeks rather than months and years. So we are releasing a new plan later this week so that we can build on what we've already achieved and continue our momentum together. We learned that it helps very much to have ambitious but realistic targets and measure our progress towards them, so we want to continue doing that. And today we're very fortunate to have Sarah Bose, Director of Development and Digital Delivery in the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, and Nancy Norris, Senior Director of Digital Trust, lots of Ds, to share how some of the themes of the upcoming plan relate to their work. So I will start with Sarah. Sarah, could you tell us a bit about how the social sector has been building up your internal digital capacity over the past year or so with products like the accessibility feedback tool? We know that digital is now touching on so many roles in the public service. Most, if not all, government services rely on technology, whether that is back-end or delivery through online channels. So just wondering how you in the social sector have been responding to that by building your internal capacity.
Thank you, Jen. So as Jen said, my name is Sarah. I am medium build. I have long dark hair and I'm wearing a black blazer. I am from the Information Services Division of the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. We also provide services to the Ministry of Children and Family Development. So collectively, we call those two ministries the social sector. Over the past 18 months, we have been making a lot of efforts to recruit more internal digital positions, so digital talent. So these are roles like Scrum Masters, full stack developers, user experience practitioners, or UX practitioners as we call them. When I started at ISD back in October 2021, we had just hired our first Scrum Master, so first Scrum Master in the social sector, and we didn't have any full stack developers or internal UX specialists. We totally relied on contractors for all of that work. By last spring, we had stood up 2 full Agile product teams within ISD. Each of these teams had a Scrum Master, a UX practitioner, and a development team as well. And one of these teams, they designed, developed, and delivered what we call the accessibility feedback tool. They did almost all of that work completely in-house. And they did this in really close collaboration with the Accessibility Directorate. So the Accessibility Directorate is the program area that actually owns this accessibility feedback tool. So we had a product owner from the business area, and then the rest of the team was from the Information Services Division. So this tool was really important commitment. It was developed actually to meet commitments related to the new Accessible British Columbia Act, which came out in June 2021. And the goal of this accessibility feedback tool is to give people a way to report barriers to accessing government services. So obviously this tool needs to be, or needed to be, accessible itself. To accomplish this, we had our product team work closely with a reference group. This reference group comprised people with lived experience who faced barriers in accessing government services. And we relied on these folks to help co-design and test the tool iteratively. So they helped us by doing everything from testing this tool on screen readers, and they also provided really valuable input into how the questions were worded, and a whole bunch of other support as well. So the team was able to launch an initial version of the tool in October 2021. It was launched as an MVP, or a minimum viable product. And since then, the team has been working on iteratively improving the tool in response to feedback, and also building out the back end to help the directorate meet their reporting requirements. And to date, the Accessibility Directorate has actually received close to 100 different submissions from real people reporting real barriers. Obviously, this work is very important because it helps illuminate challenges people face when trying to access government services, digital or otherwise. And we don't think this tool would have been as successful as it is if we had just contracted out its development. Initially, there was talk of engaging a contractor, and the contractor jumped right into assuming this needed to be a mobile app that people would download. And obviously, when the team started doing discovery work and talking to the directorate and people with lived experience, actually having a mobile app could be a barrier for some folks. So in the end, they just went with a very simple web form, but that's what would meet people's needs. And I don't think we would have gotten there without a team taking the time to actually do this discovery work instead of just jumping into solutions. I think the other really positive thing that's come out of this is now we have in-house expertise and knowledge of accessibility issues generally. So for example, some of the knowledge that this team gained through doing this work is now being applied to improve accessibility of other social sector digital products. And funny enough, one of the pieces of feedback that was received through the accessibility feedback tool had to do with WorkBC forms not being as accessible as they should be. So the team that worked on the tool is actually now able to provide insight and advice into how to make these WorkBC forms more accessible. So really, yeah, really exciting work, and it's ongoing.
That's so great. Thanks for sharing that. And it sounds like there's a lot of work happening in terms of co-designing with people in your area. That's great. Okay, I'll share one of the other themes that you'll see in the digital plan when it comes out. It's about delivering digital services based on a foundation of trust, which I think speaks a little bit to what you were talking about as well, Sarah. But Nancy, if you could share, how is your work increasing trust for BC's mining sector? And I think I forgot to mention which ministry that you come from when I started the introduction. So you are with the Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon Innovation. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, so if you could share how your work is increasing trust for BC's mining sector, I think it's really exciting work.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so the project that my team has been working on for the past couple of years is called the Energy and Mines Digital Trust. We're using digital trust technology that was actually built and contributed to the open source sector by the digital trust team at the Office of the Chief Information Officer. That team is using this technology primarily for individual identity, and we've been piloting its use for the mining sector and to allow and enable BC mines to be able to prove out where their products come from and the sustainable way in which they were produced. So we've been working very closely with the Digital Trust Services team at the OCIO to build additional functionality on top of the wallet and ledger that they have built. The functionality that we've added has been around the ability to scale this technology across government and actually have government be an issuer of digital credentials to the wallet of a mining company. So the way this adds trust is the BC government and any government really can act as a trust anchor so that credentials that are issued to a mine's digital wallet around permitting, for example, or their business license, that gives additional trust and credibility in the fact that this is a mine that operates within BC's laws, and all of the strong legislation and regulation that we have around sustainable practices. We've also been looking at use cases and doing piloting around sustainable certification for mines. So the Mining Association of Canada has a certification called the Towards Sustainable Mining certification. We've been working really closely with them to create a digital credential version of that credential. So that means that, and that process again has very strong governance around it. So that's a process that exists in the non-digital world where an environmental auditor will go to a mine and approve and look at all of the different factors around that mine's environmental performance, their social performance, how they interact with the community where the mine is the mining is happening, and then the actual governance of the mine company itself. And they will issue a certain like performance level for that mine. And so what we've done is we've set up the environmental auditor with a digital wallet that can issue this credential. The mine is able to hold that credential in their wallet, and then they can share it with the Mining Association of Canada, but also multiple other audiences, like potential investors in that mine, potential purchasers of that, the mine's output, banks that are looking to insure that mine, and the list goes on and on. So it's really it's about driving the possibilities for BC mines to access sustainable or economy that is increasingly privileging sustainable products. So it's enabling that for BC mines. It's also promoting that kind of economic development that has sustainability in mind. And it's advancing the BC government's work as becoming a digital government and enabling these kind of services for our businesses and citizens.
That's great to hear about the collaboration. And I guess if this wasn't available, these digital credentials weren't available, then this would all be happening in paper. So there'd be a paper certificate, I guess, that folks would need to share with each other to prove that something was sustainable and had been certified in some way, which is much more challenging to do in today's age, especially as these materials do move around quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, let's see if we have any questions coming up. I think we can see if we can move to the audience questions. Got some here. Okay, so one question. With the importance of accessibility, why are there nearly no supports for accessibility work being championed across government? my understanding is that there is accessibility work that is being championed and that is being supported, especially from the GDX accessibility team that can go into different areas and look at how digital information especially is being published in an accessible way. But Sarah, is there more that you've learned about this in your area and then with the accessibility tool in that journey?
Yeah, I was also going to say GDX is doing some really great work in that space. The Accessibility Directorate as well. They're a small but mighty team doing a lot of work in this regard. That said, I think there are a lot of areas we could improve, especially when it comes to some of our legacy digital products. So one of the things we're trying to do in the social sector is really encourage all of our product teams to take an accessibility first lens. So it should not be an afterthought. You need to be designing inclusively from the get-go. So I do think there is a shift in mindset going on right now, but absolutely there is more as a government that we can and should do.
More we can do, absolutely. Great. And some of the work in the digital principles that's in our new core policy that came out in May does speak to that as well. So it is definitely something that we all are expected to look at and follow. And accessibility first is a great phrase. Okay, I did have some additional questions for you, Sarah. So on this journey, you talked a little bit about the technology area and the program area working together to deliver this tool. How have you seen that happen? How have you seen technology areas and program areas work together to deliver services? And how is it going? And what kinds of supports are needed, do you think, for that type of work to continue?
I think this is a great question, potentially a little thorny too. So we definitely saw a lot of success with the accessibility feedback tool with the product owner coming from the business area. And I also should have mentioned we had subject matter experts from the directorate who were there every step of the way helping with this work. It's not always the norm, especially, I will say ISD is a wonderful place to work, but in a lot of ways, we, like many other IT shops, are kind of traditional. I think ISD is a little different from some of the other IT shops I've seen in that they already had really close relationships with program areas. But we are seeing this relationship evolve. And I think we're seeing this across government as well as program areas are taking more ownership over digital services. So I think that is an adjustment for folks in traditional IT roles, where maybe sometimes we're used to having more transactional relationships with the program areas, but these new ways of working really necessitate close collaboration. So that's a place where we are seeing a difference. I think it's for the better, but it is a change, and it's something we're all going to need to work together to iron out the kinks. And I'm sure, again, you're seeing this across government, and we're definitely not alone.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Nancy, have you seen this in your area? And is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the keys to success for our team has been having a team that focuses on building out the ecosystem of actors who can use the technology that we've been piloting, but then also having the team that's building it at the same time. And we both work in Agile, and it really is an interesting merging of policy and technology and being able to inform each other's work, because for us, the use cases that we wanted to focus on were ones that already had strong governance, that all of the different data that would be included in the credentials, it was already mapped out in an existing process that had a lot of trust and authority associated with it. And so being able to work really closely with the development team to make sure that the tool was able to handle all of that data, to present it in a way that was really accessible and that was of use to all of these different end users. I think it was like I don't know how we could have done it any other way, to be honest. It was tricky at times because we weren't always speaking the same language, but being able to work closely with each other and have sort of daily stand-ups and a lot of collaboration between the teams made a huge difference.
Do you see that this is changing the day-to-day operations in ministries of having these co-development approaches between technology and program areas in terms of sort of how we prioritize our work or how we leave space for working together? This is related to one of the questions that has come up in the chat about how this type of shift changes the day-to-day operations. So one of the things we're often hearing from folks that we work with across government is that digital service delivery is really becoming part of how we deliver programs.
Yes.
So it's less being sort of a technology is happening over here and program delivery is happening over here, whereas digital service delivery is more embedded into the way that we deliver programs, the way that we design them, the way that policies are associated with them, also as the way that we actually deliver them to people in British Columbia and businesses in British Columbia. So wondering if it's sort of changing the rhythm of how a day goes in your area, or how a day goes in the areas that you partner with.
Is that for me? I can.
Yeah, either
of us. Okay.
Yes, if you want to start, for sure.
Sure. I mean, just on a personal note, absolutely, it changed. You know, my the way that we worked. I'd never worked in Agile before, so having that the rhythm of you know, a daily stand up, and then we had you know, the period of time to get our work done and then start onto a new set of goals was very like it took a bit of getting used to for me, but I really enjoyed it. And I think that I can see that it would have benefits for a lot of different program areas, particularly ones where you're working to enable government to have a new type of digital service. And so for the work that we've been doing, the technology, we focused on energy and mining use cases, but this kind of information exchange, trusted information exchange, I think that there's so many different potential use cases. And so I can see teams like mine, say maybe in the Ministry of Forest or the Ministry of Agriculture or other Ministry of Health, or you know, other ministries that are looking to exchange information in this way, and they want to have sort of that programmatic knowledge and industry knowledge, and tie that up with the technical side of things as well.
Yeah, it sounds like all of those folks in program areas that has such subject matter expertise are really essential to making sure that our digital products meet the needs of people in British Columbia and the needs of the program areas. That's great. Okay, is there anything you wanted to add to that, Sarah? And you've seen the rhythm change in your group as there's more collaboration between the areas, or just a different way of delivering?
Sure, I can add a few points there. Again, I'll say for our information services division and social sector as a whole, this is still a really new way of working. We are, you know, maybe a little bit behind other areas in government for some good reasons. So we are seeing changes, but it is still slow. And I think one of the biggest changes, and you know, one of the biggest change management exercises for us is to communicate this concept of dedicated product teams. And so that definitely, by its very nature, changes the way that we have been working within ISD in the social sector, where you have, you know, a lot of collaboration happening, but it's in kind of bits and chunks, and you know, over sometimes several months. And in this case, it's every day, it's high touch, and it's working on delivering one priority and then moving to the next. And so that is a very different way of working. And I do think we're going to see more uptake. We are actively trying to stand up more product teams. But it is interesting to see how those teams work with some of the structures we have set up that maybe aren't necessarily as polished as they could be to enable full agile development. So things like we have an architecture review board that meets every couple of weeks. We have an amazing information security and privacy office that are very high touch with all of the privacy impact assessments and straws that go through them. And they're not always used to things changing as quickly as they do with these agile ways of working. So we are all working together to try to figure out how this is actually going to work. So we're just in the early stages, but already seeing changes.
That's great. Yeah, so one of the themes of the digital plan, I think I mentioned, is equipping our BC Public Service with the tools and the supports that are needed to do this kind of work. So it sounds like there's lots of things that we can learn from each other, things that have worked in one area that can be applied to another area, some processes that some folks have adopted that help move things along, that help move things in a more collaborative or a faster way that can be shared with each other. I know that that's some of the work that we do in the digital office, is to try to connect those folks together that have seen success in the ways that they are working, and share that with others. So it sounds like both of your areas have learned different things in different ways at different times. And thank you so much for sharing that with our audience today. And it sounds like there's also folks out there in the digital community that can help as well for folks that are earlier in their digital journeys. Is there anything in particular that you've seen that's a great support for your teams as they've moved along these journeys? As I said, we're talking about supporting capacity development. One of the things that can be helpful there is leadership support in terms of some of the questions that leaders may ask, or some of the supports that leaders may provide to teams that are new in this digital journey. And there's also supports from the Digital Academy, or supports out there online on how to adopt some of these modern ways of working, or how to learn more about any particular area, including accessibility. Is there anything that your team has found helpful in these areas?
I can answer that one.
Yeah, that's great.
So for us, kind of the biggest, most important supports have been strong executive support, for whether it's for new ways of working or for a specific product. So we've been very fortunate with the accessibility feedback tool. We have that, and even just generally with this digital journey, we do have very strong executive support. We don't always know how it's going to work, and not everybody agrees on how it should work, but there is that support for moving in this direction. So I think that is absolutely critical. And then on another note, I do want to give the Exchange Lab a big shout out, especially the digital talent team there. We've had tremendous support with our hiring and recruitment from that team. And I was able to participate on a few cross-ministry panels as part of a pilot project. And I understand that is going to be a regular thing for these digital positions. And I think that's just so efficient. It comes with its own set of challenges, but I think definitely provides a more seamless experience for people applying for these typically hard to recruit for jobs. So really appreciated all the support that we've gotten as we've worked to build these teams from the ground up.
That's great. So there's another question in the chat about accessibility resources that support managers in the accommodation process, and looking for more resources targeted to an employee audience. I know there is the accessibility guidelines available. Is there any other that you're aware of that that we could point to, or is this an area, as you say, that we need more support on?
There is an accessibility toolkit that GDX has developed. So I don't know if that's the same thing we're all talking about, but that's a really great resource. There is also an accessibility community of practice, and I would encourage folks who have questions or ideas about just accessibility in the public service generally to join that. I think it's a really great way to learn what else is going on and make some good connections, but obviously still lots of work we could be doing.
Lots of work to do. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you. It looks like we are out of time. So I'm going to move back to the housekeeping. Again, there is a survey that you will get at the end of this. And thank you so much for Sarah and Nancy for participating. And thanks so much for everybody for attending. We'll see you at the next one.